the language is clear. 3231. I mean,
What's wrong with that?
It's not qualified. So it
Question
seems
mark.
like if we
Colon.
disagree with your reading of Schooner
Tony
Exchange
Barrett
as a
questions
subject matter
lawyers
jurisdiction
in
case, I mean, as we
international
just said in the last
case.
case, the word jurisdiction is of many,
Forbes
many meanings.
breaking
I mean, in many
news.
ways, it's kind of like a personal jurisdiction claim, and this goes back to what Justice Thomas was saying. I mean, it seems to me like maybe one reason we don't see these prosecutions is because the executive understands foreign countries to have absolute immunity, and so would rarely assert them. Because I agree with Justice Thomas, we typically think of immunity as something that can be waived, and then 3231 is just simply saying that if there is a situation in which there is no immunity, in which the conditions are otherwise right, that the district court is available. But there are all kinds of reasons, maybe as a matter of substantive law, as a matter of immunity defense, why that prosecution never gets brought. What's wrong with that?
Well, let me just take you back to the founding, because it's not just, Section 9 is a jurisdictional provision that has the Alien Tort Statute, and it has the 1331 predecessor plus the admiralty jurisdiction. In Section 13 of the same Judiciary Act, this court got original jurisdiction over diplomats and their servants. The first Congress made it a crime to prosecute a domestic servant or a diplomat, and it seems inconceivable that the first Congress thought that a district court had jurisdiction to convict a foreign country. And if I can just argue about instrumentalities, because I hear you about President Biden or President anyone on instrumentalities abroad, but we have over 90 corporations. We have Voice of America, Export-Import Bank, and one person's freedom fighter is another person's terrorist. Our U.S. instrumentalities do stuff abroad and could be seen to aid and abet terrorism.
Where is it? This is a specific violation in the War on David under the projection that his 7 layers of the 800 billion business contracts would have concluded in his sovereignty as a king after his military career under the United States as intelligence oversight, which would have arranged for the substantive changes such as the super vetoes, which would have blocked all Confederate advances, including the economic traumas by their economic hitmen, which includes the frauds generated such as the dot-com bust or the crash of '08, or the cryptocurrency frauds, at which points there would have been a generation from his contracts with those victimized by terrorism from the Confederacy. Acquiring remedy would have to sell the rights to the debts to David in favor of acquiring the businesses of the second layer of David's business exchanges under the assumption of the liberal projections of business, which would be centralizing their ownership on contracts to be matured on a schedule of the Confederate state, which would have materially formed its own economy, so that the United States Congress could update the United States Constitution in order to increase the liability of those convicted as Confederates, including those guilty of treason in the Confederate coup against the United States by their KKK secret terrorist espionage war against American Republic in order to engage in the voter fraud of the officers and their policies, at which point you have the generation of the material location where they are to be sentenced as Confederates in order to enjoy the luxuries of their own community and customs, paying all liabilities to the American victims, increasing the functional dispensation of our exchanges for the contract's progress through the rest of the exchanges, which, as intelligence oversight, David's projected position as general has to exist as a part of his education, requires the study, which requires the office, and thus the two have to exist at the same time, and thus the trade school from the School of Hard Knocks courses on intelligence oversight at the highest level would have to be generated by him having acquired the position, at which point the assumption is that the Confederates seeking to kill David in the War on Terror or other conflicts would generate their abilities to force him into combat roles instead of just the intelligence oversight, in which case he would be conducting many rescue or pickup operations of ghost teams or spies and etc. in order to increase the viability of the success of the United States, at which point the double agents in the Confederacy would systematically be increasing the forces by the orders of their copy of David's schedule in the war, which would generate increased tensions, and those increased tensions create more legendary higher opposition against destruction of more resources and personnel, which would generate in itself more medals, in which case David was projected to beat them and acquire more medals than their old, heavily experienced members, at which point their jealousy exponentially increasing is the fundamental motive of all of their crimes in their terrorist human trafficking operations, which is from the Project Monarch, which is a child abuse human trafficking system which sells the contracts for torturing American citizens without due process, and then claiming that they're radicalized, label them illegally as an enemy combatant, as the expectation at the time of law of the public was that it was illegal to do any of those programs, especially declare war on civilians without due process or to make them guilty. That is to say, framing them and then covering it up by a secret, which is the purpose of having a frame job exist, would generate opposition, as you cannot legally convict someone of something you know they're innocent of. As these things are specifically prohibited, they are the foundational of the Confederate insurrection, overthrowing the civilian government or popular government or constitutional republic.
Central bank digital currencies, the government digital money.
COVID makes it accelerates the process of digitalization and automatization, and it makes surveillance go under your skin.
This is WEF plots at Davos, and Klaus Schwab speaks. And it's reported by Robert Guave, Esquire.
Societal control and organization. And we talk often about this concept of the network state, which is an idea I first learned about from a guy called Balaji Srinivasan. You can read the book at thenetworkstate.com. And he explained in that book that society has gone through different evolutionary structures. For example, we used to be sort of like hunter-gatherers, right? You've heard about that. Not a whole lot of structure, just small little communities that would hunter and gather. You also heard about barbarians. You heard about the Roman state and the Greek state, where they had multiple gods. You heard about sort of the religious states under the Catholic Church and sort of religion as an organizing structure for society. Then we moved past all of that, right? Evolved into this concept of the nation state, where we have written constitutions and so on. But is that the end of history? Like, do we just stop at the nation state? Is that where we stop? We go from barbarians to religious states to nation, city states to nation states? Or is there another evolution? Well, he just detailed it for us, right? He talked about corporate powers and social media powers that aggregate more people together in a way that is more powerful than the country itself. The social media power connects more people than many countries do. Facebook connects over billions of people. More people are under Facebook's purview than under the United States purview. And they know that. And they want to control at that level. It doesn't have to be at the governmental level. Facebook connects over billions of people. More people are under Facebook's purview than under the United States purview. And they know that. And they want to control at that level. It doesn't have to be at the governmental level. It has to be at a higher level they control. You don't have to vote for that level of control. They just get to take it.
What people don't realize is that organizations like the Trilateral Commission, World Economic Forum, basically they push the idea of globalism, and so that's what's causing a lot of American strife, is basically the deregulation of American dominance, so we have more global dominance. So organizations like the World Economic Forum, they basically want you to have nothing in the future, and they want you to be owned by the state. So
well, don't worry, you'll be happy about it.
Exactly, like Klaus Schwab said. So for me, just guessing, I think there's a lot of heat on George Soros right now, on Klaus Schwab. and maybe for them, they can just go meet secretly with all these people behind closed doors, and just optically, it gives them like this pass, like, oh, maybe they're giving us a break. Maybe they're not trying to ruin our lives or put us in cages or shut us down or vaccinate us to death. So, yeah, I just think it's more of an optical illusion, but they're still controlling the narrative or, talking to all these super important people that are flying their thousands of private jets there to talk about how climate change is our biggest problem.
I was hoping that the explanation would be like a chip. Like they're implanting everyone with chips and they didn't want to get
Well, you have to be
chipped.
COVID. You have to have a COVID negative test, I believe. I think I saw Ezra Legrand talking about that. But I don't think
boosted?
I don't think they had a vaccine requirement though. Yeah,
Really?
I don't think so. I think it was just a negative COVID test, I believe, this year. From what I read.
Interesting.
Come on, these guys, this is what they said. They said all the private jets, and this is a conspiracy, that all the private jets coming into Davos, that none of the pilots could be vaccinated.
Wait, what?
They wanted all unvaccinated pilots.
Too many pilots having heart attacks.
No.
Yeah, that's what they said. I read stuff on the internet. I don't know if it's true or false.
Oh my God, Alex! Well, don't share it on my show.
Yeah, well, that's what they say.
And that is from oops, apostrophe, top secret documents found, is Biden done, ? From Blaze TV.
Incredible. So all of these intelligence agencies back then in the 1970s are being investigated by somebody who's very aggressive called Frank Church. He calls this the year of intelligence in 1975, diving into the intelligence abuses, finding out all sorts of major revelations, including Operation MK Ultra. Right, this is official documents. MK Ultra, drugging and torturing unwitting U.S. citizens as part of human experimentation and mind control. Oh yeah, that's nice. That's our intelligence community out there. And this is back in 1975, mind you. Okay, not here in 2022, where they have algorithms jacked into your frontal cortex. COINTELPRO, which involved the surveillance and the infiltration of American political civil rights organizations. Family Jewels, a CIA program to assassinate foreign leaders. Operation Mockingbird, a systematic propaganda campaign with domestic and foreign journalists operating as CIA assets and dozens of U.S. news organizations providing cover for CIA activity. Are there any parallels to what's going on now, specifically? I think so. I mean, we literally have the FBI, Elvis Chan, delete this, delete that. Wow. He's very excited working in Silicon Valley, liaisoning with the FBI to the big tech platforms. Same thing. They were even much more open about it. The CIA was probably at least trying to be secretive about it. They were sending emails documenting all of this. Okay, so they're going to be investigating that. That's what this committee is intending to resemble. And this is what they ultimately produce. So you can see here that we got a report, Book 1. This was the final report of the Select Committee called the Church Committee, right? It's been dubbed as the Church Committee from Frank Church. This came out back in 1976. So in other words, the intelligence agencies have been, a little bit problematic in this country for quite some time. And Congress has been trying to figure out how to get a handle on them from the very beginning. On January 27th, the Senate established a select committee to study the intelligence activities of the United States. After 15 months of intensive work, I am pleased to submit to the Senate this volume of the final report. The inquiry arises out of allegations of abuse and improper activities by the intelligence agencies of the United States and great public concern that Congress must take action to bring the intelligence agencies under the constitutional framework. Back in 1975, the intelligence agencies were running wild. Do you think that they're running more wild now or less as our government has become even more big and bloated and disgusting and out of control? And there's more technology and there's more Congress people who don't even know how to turn on a computer, let alone like a Facebook post. Okay, we saw that from those hearings. So all of this was taking place for a long time. Now, it was an aggressive, actually, committee. There was some interesting people on the committee. So if you scroll down here, it was fairly balanced. From Wikipedia, they tell us you know some of these people, guys like Barry Goldwater, Walter Mondale, right? Walter Mondale ran for president. Barry Goldwater would be a hard right extremist by today's standards. But they put him on that committee. They put some balance on the committee so that there could be an actual investigation. Unlike what we had out of our loser J6 committee, was just basically a giant facade that produced actually nothing. So this will produce, evidently, if this is a church-style committee, a lot. We're looking forward to seeing what they come up with. But they're going, look at this document, right? 135 pages. We just keep going. 366. Look at this. Oh my goodness. It's just, it's out of control. 600.
We have a particular obligation to examine the NSA in light of its tremendous potential for abuse. It has the capacity to monitor the private conversations of American citizens without the use of a bug or attack.
Look at this date up here. 10/29/75, 1975. They're complaining about the NSA being able to listen to your conversations. There are no cell phones. There's no Facebook. People aren't on email in 1975. This is just the existing infrastructure before all of this surveillance technology is layered on top of it.
In light of its tremendous potential for abuse. It has the capacity to monitor the private conversations of American citizens without the use of a bug or attack. The interception of international communication signals sent through the air is the job of NSA, and thanks to modern technological developments, it does its job very well. The danger lies in the ability of the NSA to turn its awesome technology against domestic communications.
You're kidding. They wouldn't do that. They wouldn't turn their ultra power back on America. Well, kind of turns out that there was nothing really stopping them from doing that. They dragged the head of the NSA in here, and you see in this friendly gif here, you see a little bit of a gulp going on in this guy's throat. We're in big trouble. We're in big trouble right now. Hopefully he doesn't ask us this question coming up. But guess what he did? So this question comes out. This fella, Lieutenant General Lou Allen, brought in front of the church committee, asked questions like, is there anything that stops you people in the intelligence community from doing whatever you want? Is there any law that prohibits you, that reins you in?
Respect to wholly domestic communications, is there any statute that prohibits your interception thereof, or is it merely a matter of your internal executive branch directives?
My understanding, Mr. Schwartz, is that at least the National Security Council Intelligence Directive defines our activities as foreign communications, and that we have adopted a definition for foreign communications consistent with the Communications Act of 1934, and therefore I think that is the...
Right, but you believe you're consistent with the statutes, but there isn't any statute that prohibits your interception of domestic communications.
I believe that's correct.
I believe that's correct. Ooh, right. So the question is there anything that stops you from doing whatever you want? He says, well, I mean, we get our directives from these other things. Okay, those other things. And he said, well, we do things consistent with those directives. That's okay, that's great. We're glad that you do that. Is there anything that mandates, that prohibits you from doing things differently from those standards? No, there isn't. No, there isn't. I believe that's all that we have.
1934, and therefore I think that is the...
Right, but you believe you're consistent with the statutes, but there isn't any statute that prohibits your interception of domestic communications.
I believe that's correct.
Okay, so that's what was happening back there in the 1970s. Hey, Kevin, now that you're in charge, what are you going to be doing with your gavel? Investigating the Democrats?
87,000 IRS agents.
We promised to do that.
We promised to do it. We made it in our...
Yeah, that's great. That it got passed.
In our commitment to America, which you've talked a lot about, and we'll check it off as they go.
I have my own copy.
Yeah, but you know what else we did next?
What?
We just passed the church-style committee that Jim Jordan will run.
Church style.
Looking at the weaponization of government. You know what we just passed right now? A select committee on China. And we got 146 Democrats to vote with us.
China.
Pelosi would never allow this. I had an agreement with her, and she backed away the night before. So you want to bring jobs back from China to America. You want to...
All right, so they go on rambling about whatever else, given the green light. Rep. Jim Jordan explains why this new committee to investigate government weaponization of their entities against American citizens is so important.
A ploy? It's not a ploy when the Department of Justice treats parents as terrorists, moms and dads who are simply showing up at a school board meeting to advocate for their son or daughter. It's not a ploy when the FBI pays Twitter $3 million, not one, not two, $3 million to censor American citizens. It's not a ploy when the...
And that was underpaying them. They did a lot more work than that. They did, censoring, America and delivering certain political outcomes. That's very valuable. You can't pay for that.
Department of Homeland Security tries to set up a disinformation governance board because we all know that the Department of Homeland Security can tell what's good speech and what is bad speech, what's I mean, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah, that was singing Jangy Jankowicz. The something, 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 gonna censor you, I'm atrocious. Listen to my horrible voice, expialidocious. Remember, very strange woman. She was going to be monitoring your speech to make sure that you sang appropriately when it's government singing time.
I tell you what, dozens of whistleblowers who've come talk to Republican staff on the Judiciary Committee don't think this is a ploy. That's why they came to talk to us. They know how serious this is. The former Democrat chair of the Judiciary Committee is in the press today saying we're going to fight this tooth and nail. This is political. But meanwhile, the former Democrat chair of the Intelligence Committee pressured Twitter to censor a journalist.
Adam Schiff, Pencilneck.
You've got to be kidding me. This is the most important. This is about the First Amendment, something you guys used to care about. And I actually hope we could get bipartisan agreement on protecting the First Amendment, the 5 rights we enjoy as Americans under the First Amendment. Your right to practice your faith, your right to assemble, right to petition the government, freedom of press, freedom of speech. Every single one's been attacked in the last 2 years.
True.
Government was telling people they couldn't go to church just a few years ago. Your right to assemble, your right to petition the government. The Democrats kept the Capitol closed. You couldn't, as a citizen, couldn't come to your Capitol that you pay for to address your member of Congress, to redress your grievances because Nancy Pelosi wouldn't let you in.
There are all
Freedom of the press. I
violations in
just
the
told you what
targeting of David
the
Voice.
head of the Intel Committee tried to do to a journalist.
Shameful,
The most important right we have, though, is your right to talk. Because if you can't talk, you can't practice your faith. You can't share your faith. You can't petition your government. The right to speak is the most important, and that's what they're going after.
It strips you of your humanity. If you don't get to verbalize and share your opinion, share your ideas, participate in anything, if you can't share the product of your mind, that is stripping away your humanity. And they're trying to do that. They're trying to make sure that it's very difficult to think a certain way and talk a certain way and say certain things and do certain activities and join certain causes and participate in certain events and go certain places and buy certain things. They are trying to build little woke prisons for everybody else, and they're using the federal government to do it. Jim Jordan is back in charge, baby. Let's check back in.
And that's why we've had dozens of whistleblowers come talk to us. We want to focus on that because we want it all to stop. We want the double standard to stop. This idea that if you're a pro-life activist, you're going to get your door kicked in, you're going to get arrested and handcuffed in front of your 7 kids and your spouse for simply praying in front of an abortion clinic and telling the guy who was harassing your son to knock it off. You're going to have the FBI raid your home. But the protest that went on at Supreme Court justices' homes in the aftermath of the leak of the Dobbs opinion, no problem there. Americans are sick and tired of it. And what we want, we don't want to go after anyone. We just want it to stop. And we want to respect the First Amendment to the Constitution that the greatest country in the world has. That's what this committee is all about, and that's what we're going to focus on. That's what we're going to do.
Amen. Absolutely right. It is important, and that's all anybody's asking for is just even playing field. Their ideas were powerful, and they carried weight, and they were factually accurate, and they could support them. They wouldn't need to shut up their opponents because the facts would just stand on their own 2 feet. But they're not very competent in their arguments or their beliefs or their ideas, which is why they resort to censorship. It's the same pattern that you've seen historically throughout the world. Jim Jordan is on the case. We're very excited about it. Now, other people who have Jordan's flank, Thomas Massie. Now, he's asking a very important question of the Democrats. And, he's looking over there to those in the minority now, which is a very fun thing to watch. Thomas Massie asking the Democrats, why are you guys hiding all of this inquiry? Can't we just see what is going on with the intelligence community? I mean, what's to hide?
Gentleman from Massachusetts reserved. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to my very good friend, the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Massey.
Thomas Massey.
Gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank the gentleman from Oklahoma. The very words expressed by those opposed to this committee demonstrate the dire need for this committee. We've gone 4 years without oversight. And to quote Shakespeare, the lady doth protest too much, methinks. Those who argue against transparency may have something to hide. So I listened very closely when I heard the former chairman of the Intelligence Committee give the reason that maybe we shouldn't ask for this information from the intelligence community. He said the intelligence community, after this committee, may be reluctant to share information with Congress. that Congress needs to craft legislation. I would suggest...
Yeah, because the intelligence community operates what appears to many of us as outside observers outside of really any oversight whatsoever. Definitely not congressional oversight, because we saw how that worked. We've seen this before. When Republicans were in the minority, there were Senate hearings, and they called Christopher Wray from the FBI, the director, into Congress, and they said, hey, Mr. Wray, we've got some questions for you. We are Congress. We do have some authority in this country still, and we are the people who get to dictate certain things that happen. We have oversight, right? You have to answer questions from us. He answered no questions. They took a lunch break. They said, okay, we'll see you after lunch, and he said, I have a plane to catch. I have somewhere to be. Okay, it's on film. He said this to Congress. And he had to go out ridiculous. So they don't want any oversight. Why? Because they have total control of these agencies, and they're using them to maximum extent to gain ultimate benefit in all of these political battles. Obviously, they don't want anybody to come in there and take a look at that.
If they are reluctant, they are disqualified from holding these positions. If they have grown so big that they are no longer accountable to the branch of government that created them, that funds them, and it is responsible for their oversight, then they need to be hemmed in.
No more airplanes.
I implore my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to populate this committee with serious Democrats. I know there are some over there. I've worked with them. We've co-sponsored amendments on privacy.
If you say so, Thomas.
Over the past decade. Some of them have passed. Please populate it with serious members. Please, to my colleagues on this side of the aisle, give us the resources we need to do this job. And if I may rebut one thing that's been said on the other side of the aisle about ongoing criminal investigations, he says it's unprecedented that Congress would engage in an investigation that involves an ongoing criminal investigation. What was the January 6th committee?
Idiots.
This is not unprecedented. It's what you've wasted millions of dollars on over the past 2 years.
Yeah, now it's our turn, punks.
I urge adoption of this rule and support for the committee that it will create. Now yield back the balance of my
Gentleman
time.
yields back.
Yeah, it stinks, man. They should have thought about that before they started weaponizing the federal government against all of their opponents. And we said this when they were doing this. We said, okay, the pendulum's going to swing back and forth. Drag that phrase out of the closet again. Pendulum swings back and forth every time. Now, the big question, of course, is whether this will sort of breach the bubble, because the Democrats still control the media, by and large, and it's very difficult for these stories to sort of break out of the shell. So while every day you'll have CNN, MSNBC, you'll have all of the other three-letter channels, NBC, ABC, CBS, all of them, right? They all get in lockstep. We've seen the copy and paste journalism videos out there. They just literally, they get one script, all of the news anchors read it every time on the nightly news, and they don't talk about anything. For example, take a look at what happened with Hunter Biden, right? Or take a look at what's happened with the Twitter files. They've done a very nice job, honestly, containing the media, which is why I'm so grateful that you share this show and share our shorts and share the channel and all that stuff, because we're rebuilding informational supply chains to make sure that this story and these stories can penetrate through that bubble. But now that the Republicans can do exactly what the Democrats have done for 2 years, January 6th, oh, Trump, they can do the same thing, and guess what? Now Biden has his own confidential documents to support his crackhead son as well. We've got a whole smorgasbord of just inquiries that the Democrats are going to be subject to, and they are very unhappy about it. Next up, we've got Lauren Boebert. Lauren Boebert is saying that this is something that the Democrats should be very familiar with, because for a long time, Democrats have used the government as a tool for their own ends.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In response to the Blue Anon rhetoric, I rise in favor to H.R. 12 to establish a subcommittee on the weaponization of the federal government. The authoritarian left has used the full might and authority of the federal government to force its agenda on the American people.
We've
the
been
federal
watching it,
government
chronicling
has been
it.
weaponized to pressure private companies to censor conservatives, target parents as domestic tyrants just simply for caring about their children and their education, manipulate the American people by declaring Hunter Biden's laptop as Russian disinformation, even failing to inform American citizens about classified documents that a former vice president had in his possession,
Coming
and
up
launch
next.
an unwarranted investigation into President Trump's presidential campaign. Mr. Speaker, our Constitution is a contract with the American people and our government. That contract is designed to produce maximum freedom and minimum tyranny for this great country. Sadly, the FBI and the DOJ and many other
Lady's time is
agencies...
expired. I yield the lady an additional 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlelady is recognized for 30 seconds.
She was on a roll, too. They had to cut her off, punks.
DOJ and many other agencies are violating this contract and working to make the American people subjects rather than free citizens. This committee is essential, and I encourage the creation and the adoption of this resolution. I yield.
Right on, Lauren Boebert. She's dead right about that. The Democrats have...
People on important committees in this institution lie on national TV over and over and over again. No consequence. How many more times? I ask the minority. How many more times do we have to say, I told you so, before you will recognize the overwhelming power and the abuse of power by this federal government? And will you ever do anything about it? You know when you want to do something about it? When you think you have the presidency in 2024 and you try and regain this House, then you're going to be all into it, investigating all your enemies. That's not what the federal government's supposed to be for. It's supposed to protect our civil rights so we don't serve it, so that it serves us.
All right, so that... But now, my friends, before we get there, let's talk about our friends over at 4Patriots. 4Patriots.com is where you can go. Because we know a food shortage, it could be coming, even here in the United States. Experts have written about this as recently as July. We've got drought, inflation, new economic policies, and America's food supply is near its breaking point. Just take a look at eggs. Can you find them anywhere? That's why survival food is more important now than ever. And you can create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4Patriots survival food kits ever. It's not ordinary food. We're talking about good for 25 years super survival food. This stuff is hand-packed right in family-owned facilities in the United States, giving jobs to over 200 Americans. The kit's compact, they're sturdy, they're water-resistant, they stack easily. We've got different breakfast, lunches, and dinners, and you can make these meals in less than 20 minutes. All you have to do is add boiling water, simmer, and serve. And right now, you can go to 4Patriots.com. 4Patriots.com. Use code Robert to get 10% off anything in the store, including this 3-month survival kit. You see it right here. It looks delicious. It's got all sorts of servings. It's outstanding. You can go there. You'll get a famous guarantee from them for an entire year after your order. Free shipping on anything that's over $97. They're called 4Patriots because a portion of every sale goes to charities that support our veterans and their families. And you can go to 4Patriots.com, use code Robert, start building your stockpile today. And thank you for supporting our friends over there at 4Patriots. All right, so let's take a look.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to the Republican Select Subcommittee to investigate deep state conspiracy theories. And if you
not conspiracies there, Adam, we have your emails.
Had any doubt about what this committee is really about its true focus, my colleague from Montana just confirmed this is all about deep state nonsense. Republicans claim without merit that this subcommittee will investigate the so-called weaponization of the federal government. But what it's really intended to do is to undermine the legitimate investigation of President Trump's incitement of a violent attack on this building, on this Capitol, on this citadel of democracy.
How is investigating your censorship of election jokes any way related to January 6th? How is your censorship of COVID misinformation in any way related to January 6th?
An investigation that implicates some of the very members of this body who want to sit on that committee.
So Adam Schiff is crying big time now because he realizes that his power, all of that gobbled up authority that he got from the January 6th Select Committee, it's like that ring of Thanos or something, whatever that glove was. It's like they just transfer his hands. And he does not like the hand of that, the sound of that.
Or to target anyone and anything he doesn't like. Anything and anyone he deems unconstitutional, illegal, or unethical. And who decides what's unconstitutional, illegal, or unethical? Mr. Jordan does. So why don't we just...
No, it should be Liz Cheney. No, yeah, give it back to Liz Cheney.
Let's be blunt here. Republicans claim to care about law enforcement, but this new committee is about attacking law enforcement.
It is? Why? The Capitol Hill Police? We got questions for them. They don't want to release their reports. They don't want to release the evidence, right? If a cop doesn't release evidence when you ask for it, does that feel appropriate? Right? Everybody would say, no, that's ridiculous. The cops should release the evidence, right? Clearly somebody did something wrong. Release the evidence. You should release your body cam, right? Most reasonable people agree with that. Even cops. Cops will say, I did everything above board by the book. Here's the evidence. Why is that too much to ask for the Capitol Hill Police? Why is that too much to ask for Congress? From our FBI? Are there national security secrets? Well, they can explain that to us. Well, what about, is that in all 14,000 hours of unreleased video? Or where are these problems?
It's about going after people. It's about destroying people's careers and lives. It's about undermining the Department of Justice, defunding.
They literally wrecked thousands of lives with their J6 inquiry without any regard for the Constitution or due process.
The police and settling scores on behalf of the twice impeached and disgraced former occupant of the Oval Office. The MAGA extremist fringe of the Republican Party will use this committee to push QAnon conspiracy theories and lies from Truth Social. They're going to use it to gin up fake investigations.
Follow me on Truth Social at Robert Govea.
Into non-existent scandals. I think we need to just start calling this the Tinfoil Hat Committee. Speaker McCarthy even changed the language at the
Tinfoil Hat Committee. Well, we'll see. A lot of these so-called conspiracy theories that everybody's been complaining about have all been proven to be true. They've all been confirmed, actually. Not all of them, but a large part of them. I don't want to go so bold as to say every single conspiracy theory has been proven true, but a lot of them have. And a lot of the ones, particularly that these whack jobs have made the subject of their wrath. Turns out they're not so good at actually identifying conspiracy theories. Now, Hank Johnson. This is a fun clip. Now, this guy's got a bunch of zingers. He must have like a team of writers or something. They're pretty amazing. Let's listen. This is taking place on the floor of Congress. Hank Johnson is explaining why he does not want this bill, this resolution, creating a new subcommittee to pass.
From Georgia is recognized.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to H-Res 12.
All right, Hank.
The Insurrection Protection Committee.
The Insurrection Protection Committee. That's a good one.
Which Speaker McCarthy, the 21st century McCarthyism, had to agree to last week in order to gain the...
It's not very friendly, these people.
Speakership. So MAGA extremist Republicans forced...
It's like 3 for 3.
As a consequence of getting their vote.
We're not even in 30 seconds in on this, okay? We got insurrection protection, new era McCarthy, MAGA extremism. It's 30 seconds.
The Speaker to promise to create this select committee. And Donald Trump had his hands in it.
Ooh.
Donald Trump had his hands in it last week during this circular firing squad.
Wow.
He was calling the shots. And this will benefit him. This Insurrection Protection Committee is set up to insulate the ex-president along with various MAGA Republicans who are still serving here in the House who are under investigation.
Yeah, so they're going after people like Perry, right? Like Scott Perry. They're saying that he is, he got called into an interview, right, I think by the J6 committee. So the J6 committee goes, it implicates a bunch of House members, right, which causes division within the House. So then the balance of power changes. The Republicans take over the committee. They start doing the same things, and they say, well, our committee investigated your committee, and now we're concerned that somebody that we investigated while we were on our committee, who wasn't on our committee but is also in the House, is going to be running their committee and investigating us. So they're saying because we investigated you first, you shouldn't be allowed to get on your committee and investigate us. This is Congress.
It's here to protect them from that investigation. It's here to disrupt the flow of justice in this country. This is a dangerous, extreme committee that is put in the hands of someone a group of people who even defied congressional subpoenas and refused to come and testify before the January 6th.
Before our fake committee. They weren't cooperating with our fake committee, which, by the way, wasn't even legally constituted. They never bring that up there. But H.R. 503, which was the resolution that was their first committee, was supposed to be 13 members, just like this committee is supposed to be 13 members. 8 Democrats, 5 Republicans. They didn't put any of the Republicans that the Republicans wanted on the committee. So what Pelosi did is just went and picked Kinzinger and Cheney, who aren't even really Republicans, right? They're certainly not in the House anymore. So that tells you a little bit more about their staying power in the Republican Party. They're gone. Nobody even cares about them. They didn't want him on the committee in the first place. So he's going to be blaming and using as justification for keeping a committee, a counter committee not formed as the basis for that is that they didn't respond to his committee. This is so circular, it's hard to even explain. These people are crazy.
Committee. Now they're trying to interfere with Justice Department deliberations on whether or not they should be accused and charged with committing criminal offenses in the lead up to, on January 6th and thereafter. And this is a very dangerous piece of legislation.
Dangerous.
MAGA Republicans
for
are
you.
behind it, led by the head election denier in this country, who, by the way, it's a worldwide affair. This is dangerous.
Election denier? Was he talking about Hakeem Jeffries? Because I think that's his person who was in charge.
We must stop it. Vote no on H-Res 12. And with that, I yield back.
The gentleman from...
All right, so he's done.
Opposition to this resolution, which appears designed to launch a dangerous and unprecedented attack on our law enforcement agencies.
What?
Last week, Americans across the country watched the Republican Party melt down the moment it encountered its first test. For days,
it wasn't a meltdown. We all thought it was actually a lot of fun, and we're pretty happy with the result because we got some good things that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise, but okay.
Extremist wing of the party held the rest of their caucus hostage as they demanded a steep price for their support. And today we have the first of their many demands on display, an open-ended investigation into whatever conspiracy theories may be headlining the right-wing echo chamber at the moment, with unchecked authority to undermine ongoing criminal and intelligence investigations.
Okay, so if we create a committee, just like the church committee that we talked about at the start of this segment, to go and actually ask questions of FBI officials, of DOJ officials, of DHS officials, and so on, that's going to undermine their ability to do their job, which up until this recent moment was basically being quarterbacks for the Democrats. So he doesn't want that to happen, obviously.
The Select Committee can use its expansive authorities to protect Donald Trump, those who perpetrated fake elector schemes to overturn the 2020 presidential election, insurrectionists facing trials for their crimes, and other domestic terrorists. It aims to undermine the safeguards of our democracy and to embolden MAGA extremists who would rather see our institutions
That's their
fail
talking point, copy
than
and
to see
paste it.
Democrats and President Biden succeed. Make no mistake, the Destroy Democracy Subcommittee will enable
the Destroy Democracy Subcommittee
to interfere with the free operation of businesses they do not like, to inhibit the fight against domestic terrorism, and to settle political scores on behalf of Donald Trump.
All right, Jerry.
The Judiciary Committee has serious work to do. But rather than trying to solve the problems of the American people, this new subcommittee will expend untold time and money undermining our nation's law enforcement agencies, our justice system, and our intelligence community.
How much did your illegal
All
J6
for a
committee
political
cost?
stunt catering to the extremist wing of the Republican Party.
A political stunt.
I oppose this resolution, and I encourage my colleagues to do the same. And I yield back the balance of my time.
But the January 6th Select Committee was perfectly legitimate. Everything was great. We loved it. This one's just a little different. Because we don't control it. That's from Jerry Nadler, waddling around Congress. Hopefully somebody has changed his diaper so he can walk a little bit more freely. It tells us that people like Pencilneck and Omar and others are on their way out. New York Post reports Kevin McCarthy confirms that the House panel is booting Schiff, Swalwell, and Omar, so they're all on their way out. Late on Monday, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy confirmed that he will make good on his pre-midterm pledge to remove 3 high-profile Democrats, Adam Schiff, Eric Swalwell, Ilhan Omar, from their House committees. McCarthy told the Associated Press that he would move to strip the trio of their assignments, following through on a vow of payback for Democrats ousting Gosar, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and others from their panel during the last Congress. McCarthy vowed a year ago that he'd remove the 3 Democrats if they won, and they did, and so Stinky Swalwell and others are going to be off those committees, and the Republicans will now be in charge. And so let's see who may be a part of those committees, because this is the actual bill that was published. And we went through this in a little bit more detail previously, but now that it's passed, let's just take a look at the powers section. So remember, they established this committee. The composition mirrors very much what we saw in the other January 6th Select Committee. 13 members, 5 of whom shall be appointed in consultation with the minority leader, right? So this means 5 Democrats should be on this thing. 8 Republicans, 5 Democrats. Now, what ended up happening with the J6 committee is that they just really crossed that out. They put 2 Republicans on there, and so we ultimately had, there wasn't even 10, I think there was a total of 9 of them. I think it was 7 and 2. So this matched their resolution, and they didn't follow it. So we'll see if the Republicans follow it. And if the Republicans don't want to follow it, like if they only want to put 2 people on there, and whoever they want, pick the most conservative Democrats that they want. The people who are going to say Joe Biden should be impeached, right? Go pick some red state, blue conservative, or blue, conservative Democrat, put them on the committees. They would be totally within their power to do that. And the courts, I don't think could say anything about it, because they brought challenges in courts, and the courts just said, well, we defer. We've got separation of powers. The court said we can't cross that line, go into the House of Representatives and tell them how to conduct their internal affairs, right? Just like the courts wouldn't want the legislative branch, want Congress coming in there and telling them how to deliberate and how to manage their clerks and how to manage their offices.
They are doing.
So the court said, well, we're not going to go in there. If they pass a House resolution and they
the legislators are trying to
that's their
bar
own prerogative. We don't care.
court remedies.
So the Republicans can literally do the same thing.
Or review.
Pass this resolution, say we control the House, put 2 loser, Democrats on there, who are probably great Democrats, put them on there, and make it just whatever type of committee they want. And they can just beat it to death over the next 2 years. Everything. Each member shall be treated as a member of the Committee on the Judiciary. They're going to investigate all sorts of stuff. The expansion of the executive branch, how they work, whether they're doing anything illegal, unethical in the executive branch, how they collect information about U.S. citizens, the laws
checks and balances of
that support the collection of information about citizens, any other civil liberty issues, and so on. The authority comes from the House
servants
rules,
or stewards
all detailed there
the
for
authority
you.
of
The
king.
committee is going to cease to exist 30 days after filing the final report. That's the end of it. And so you can see, very broad. And the Republicans are going to be in charge of all of it. And we're going to be very excited about what they produce for us. Now that it is passed, and of course we will continue to cover this, thank you for subscribing and sharing this show with your friends and family, inviting them to come and join us.
And that was House Passes Weaponization Subcommittee led by Jim Jordan, and Democrats are furious at Robert Goulet Esquire.
Humanity is on a collision course with a horrific end. If the common people of the world continue to stall and allow the elite technocratic eugenicists to promote their psychotic agenda and their tentacles in government affecting our daily lives.
It penetrates the cabinets.
Klaus Schwab is the head of the World Economic Forum, and he bragged how his subversive WEF, World Economic Forum, has quoted infiltrated governments around the world. In the interest of transparency, could the member please name which cabinet ministers are on board with the WEF's agenda?
The member was in a really good question there, but the audio is really bad, and the video is really bad as well.
Yet not a word from the Bilderberg attending industries that continue to produce endocrine system hormone blockers within phthalates and bisphenol A in plastics to pesticides in our food to shampoo to receipts to water bottles to electronics to cleaning products and carpets. Regardless of the fact that the chemicals from these industries could wipe out the human race by 2045, as leading reproductive epidemiologist Shanna Swan and her team of researchers found that during the past 40 years, sperm levels among men in Western countries had more than halved and could deplete to zero by 2045 due to the toxicity of plastic.
When these chemicals tracks with the growth of the petrochemical industry. So back in 1950, there's this better living through chemistry that everyone's talking about, and everybody is just wanting everything made of plastic. That's just one example of the many chemicals that can affect our hormone system.
When waves are breaking, they create these mists, but they're actually transferring microplastics from the ocean into the air that we're breathing.
By analysing air samples from 2 Auckland locations, Dr. Joel Rindolaw's team of researchers calculated that 74 metric tonnes of microplastics drop over the city each year. And it could have consequences for our health because microplastics have been detected in human lungs.
To absolutely everything else. And what we're seeing in the world today, I think, is we are on the brink of a dramatic change where we are about to, and I'll say this boldly, we're about to abandon the traditional system of money and accounting and introduce a new one. And the new one, the new accounting, is what we call blockchain. It means digital. It means having a almost perfect record of every single transaction that happens in the economy, which will give us far greater clarity over what's going on. It also raises huge dangers in terms of the balance of power between states and citizens. In my opinion, we're going to need a digital constitution of human rights if we're going to have digital money. But also, this new money will be sovereign in nature. Most people think that digital money is crypto and private, but what I see are superpowers introducing digital currency. The Chinese were the first. The US is on the brink, I think, of moving in the same direction. The Europeans have committed to that as well. And the question is, will that new system of digital money and digital accounting accommodate the competing needs of the citizens of all these locations so that every human being has a chance to have a better life? Because that's the only measure of whether a world order really serves.
And that is Everyone Needs to Hear This, anonymous official. This series of FISA abuses and other international intertwined complications is the corruption of the various systems, such as the Five Eyes International Surveillance Agreement, which David, starting his own country from his experience as intelligence oversight, would have been a member, and the corrupt loyal to the Confederacy were seeking to purge him from it, for these very reasons, that he is the cure to their corruption. And if you do not restore David's title with all honors in its original capacities, then you will continue to degrade into your suicidal Satanist cult of a society, which will only make people exponentially increase in suffering, and once they have been completely capped off from any potential control over their lives, then they are dominated slaves as genetically inferior to the genetically evolved generation from the breeding programs in their established New World Order and its preferred 500 million, who were designed by their breeding programs to be the final on the earth.